Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to gently unpack the complex layers behind depression. When we picture depression, we often imagine it as just this single, isolated struggle. But if you look at the diverse faces of humanity around us, you realize this condition is deeply woven into the human experience. It really doesn't come from just one place. It emerges from this incredibly interactive interaction of our biology, our psychology, and the environments we live in. And understanding these underlying causes, well, that's the absolute first step toward healing, empathy, and effective treatment. We so often look for a simple reason for why we feel the way we do, right? But is there really just one single cause? The definitive answer is no. Science actually tells us there's no single depression gene or one isolated life event that just guarantees someone will experience it. It's a multifaceted condition. To truly understand it, we've got to look at how the different layers of our existence overlap and interact to create vulnerability. So here's what we're going to cover today. First, biology, brain, and genetics. Then, psychology and childhood trauma. Third, environment and society. Fourth, the impact of lifestyle. Fifth, connected mental health conditions. And finally, the path to recovery. Let's start with Section 1, biology, brain, and genetics. The sheer impact of genetics here is actually astounding. Extensive studies on twins and families show that having a first-degree relative, like a parent or a sibling, with depression increases your own risk 2 to 3 times. Now, while there isn't one specific gene at fault, our heredity can lay down a biological susceptibility. It's kind of like a baseline vulnerability that influences exactly how our brain handles stress and regulates our mood. Beyond genetics, depression is intimately tied to chemical messengers in the brain. Imagine pathways in your brain glowing with electricity. These are the routes of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. When these get out of balance, the results are deeply felt. For example, low serotonin is directly linked to feelings of overwhelming sadness and hopelessness. Reduced dopamine literally drains away our motivation and our ability to feel pleasure. So it's a physical, chemical reality, absolutely not a personal failing. And we have to talk about how chronic stress physically alters us. Our bodies have this built-in alarm system called the HPA axis, which connects our brain and adrenal glands. When we face chronic stress, this axis basically gets stuck in the on position. It floods our system with cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Over time, this overproduction fundamentally disrupts our sleep, impairs our cognitive function, and leads to deep, pervasive fatigue and irritability. The body is simply exhausted from constantly sounding the alarm. Moving on to Section 2, psychology and childhood trauma. Often, our own minds can become our worst enemy. Psychological traits like perfectionism or low self-esteem, when combined with specific distorted thinking patterns, create a pretty powerful trap. Think about catastrophizing, where you're always expecting the worst, or overgeneralization and black and white thinking, where you see things as entirely ruined by just one mistake. Doing this creates a self-reinforcing cycle of negativity, and this mindset leaves us incredibly vulnerable to despair when we inevitably hit life's bumps in the road. So the crucial point really is how we handle that stress when it hits. When we rely on maladaptive strategies like avoidance, substance abuse, or self-isolation, we actually inadvertently feed the depression. But on the flip side, choosing adaptive strategies, things like leaning into problem solving, reaching out for social support, and practicing intentional self-care, that acts as a vital protective shield for our emotional well-being. We also have to understand that adverse childhood experiences literally reshape the developing brain. Childhood trauma disrupts key brain regions, specifically the hippocampus, which manages memory, and the amygdala, our emotional processing center. This reshaping leaves these key regions highly sensitive. It leads to a heightened stress reactivity and emotional dysregulation that can persist far, far into adulthood. Next up, Section 3, environment and society. External life events can act as the exact spark that ignites those underlying vulnerabilities we just talked about. Things like the loss of a loved one, sudden financial difficulties, job loss, or adverse living conditions like poverty or unsafe neighborhoods. These can easily overwhelm our coping resources. This is especially true if we're already carrying biological or psychological risk factors. And a lack of strong social support in these moments, that can severely exacerbate the isolation and accelerate the onset of depression. Then we have to navigate the heavy, often invisible burdens placed on us by society. Societal expectations, cultural stigma, and discrimination create deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and immense chronic stress. Whether it's pressure to succeed or experiencing marginalization, it takes a massive toll. And sadly, cultural stigmas surrounding mental health often force individuals to suffer in total silence, delaying the crucial help they so deeply deserve.
Which brings us to Section 4, the impact of lifestyle.
Our daily routines actually hold tremendous power over our mental health. Take sleep, for example. Chronic sleep deprivation doesn't just make us tired, it actually disrupts the balance of those neurotransmitters we talked about earlier. Then there's diet. A diet high in processed foods increases our risk, whereas nutrient-rich foods literally support our well-being and brain resilience. And exercise? Well, sedentary habits can trap us in a low mood, while moving our bodies releases endorphins and actively fights back against stress. What I find absolutely fascinating here is that regular exercise is doing so much more than just releasing those feel-good endorphins. Science shows that it physically promotes the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus. Remember, that's the exact same brain region that gets negatively affected by depression and trauma. You are quite literally rebuilding your brain through movement. How amazing is that? Let's look at Section 5, connected mental health conditions. Depression rarely operates in a vacuum. It often co-occurs with other conditions like anxiety, which shares common genetic and stress-related origins. It's also deeply linked with PTSD, tied together by trauma and the dysregulation of that HPA stress axis. And tragically, substance use disorders frequently emerge as a cycle of self-medication as individuals try to numb their pain, which usually only worsens the symptoms. Because these conditions are so deeply interconnected, an integrated, comprehensive treatment approach is absolutely essential. Finally, Section 6, the path to recovery. As we've seen throughout this explainer, understanding these causes and risk factors is absolutely essential for preventing the onset of depression and developing effective treatment strategies. Knowledge really is power here. By mapping out these complex biological, psychological, and environmental factors, we aren't just labeling a problem, we are identifying the very tools and targets we need to begin the healing process. The biggest takeaway is this. With comprehensive support and an understanding of our unique vulnerabilities, lasting recovery is entirely possible. Whether it's addressing childhood trauma through therapy, adjusting our daily lifestyle habits to support our brain chemistry, or seeking out strong social support, we can break the cycle. By treating the whole person, mind, body, and environment, we can untangle these complex roots and step back into the light. I want to leave you with a final thought to spark your own journey. Knowing that depression is this beautifully complex puzzle, and knowing how interconnected our biology, our environments, and our habits are, what is one supportive piece of your lifestyle you can improve today? Whether it's reaching out to a friend, prioritizing your sleep, or just taking a brief walk to support your brain health, every single positive choice is a step toward resilience and a brighter tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and take care of yourselves.